Good afternoon, everybody, and another lovely Friday. And today I'm chatting to a gentleman by the name of Aldri Van Jaarsveld. And Aldri and myself actually went to the same school, and his dad taught me in the old standard 4. And yeah, now Aldri is a very cool guy. And yeah, let's catch up a little bit. Here we go. Yes.
Hallo.
Hoe gaan het?
Dankie en jy?
Kan nie klaar nie.
Are we going to do this in English or Afrikaans?
I think let's do it in English so that we can shock some of the people back home, and then also everybody else can listen.
Oh, well, we'll try our best, eh?
Yeah, well, if we switch over, it's one of those things. So how have you been?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I mean, I'm privileged to be amongst all the distinguished guests that you have had in the past. I had a look at some of the names, and I'm maybe the most least notorious person that you've found to be available on a Friday at 3 o'clock. You know, usually around 3 o'clock in Cape Town or wherever, you know, people are clocking off. They're not tuning in. But now with a different take on business, you know, we obviously, everybody's trying to tune in to find something relevant. So apart from that, I'm all well. I'm sad that this thing is live with imagery, because usually I've got people telling me I've got a voice for television and a face and hair, especially now for radio. So yeah.
Well, if I've got to listen to some of the Afrikaans music singers, they haven't even got a voice for radio as well. So don't worry, we're all right.
Well, they have said of some notorious Afrikaans guys that hulle het so min ritme, hulle kan nie eers van 'n deur klop nie. So yeah. So yeah, but, thanks for having me on your show. Yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever we'll be discussing. But anyway,
it will be whatever. It will be whatever. So, are you still in Joburg?
Yes, I am. We've got an operation in Johannesburg mainly, and we've got a satellite office down in Cape Town. Okay. The lockdown beat me to it, so I couldn't get down there quick enough. But you know, Joburg's been my second home now for just over 10 years that I found myself here, and it's a very lively and quite cosmo environment. You know, where we come from. You know, I have to disclose it, but it is Moorreesburg. You know, it's a bit of a one-horse town. You know, you've got one set of robots there, and that's it. You know, so everything, you know, is much bigger anywhere else. But yeah, so I've been privileged to be working in Johannesburg now for over 10 years, and you know, it's quite an interesting place.
What happened? What did you go do after school? Because you were in matric when I was in standard 7, or the grade 9, as they call it now. And then we met through a mutual friend, Aaron's, who's also been on for a chat many years later. And then we've done 1 or 2 little projects together. But what happened after school? What was your story?
Basically after school, you know, I'm glad you're asking, because usually they say people are arrogant when they tell you they went to Stellenbosch. But, you know, for my sins, I went to Stellenbosch Varsity. And, you know, it was quite a stint that I had there. I studied all sorts of things, from law to political science honors. I had a special year that I did all the subjects that I always wanted to dabble in. Industrial psychology, German, French, which I failed because I arrived inebriated at the oral session and I couldn't pronounce the words in French. Yeah. So I failed French. I had to pay the money back, which I did. I'm actually one of the people that paid back the money. And, you know, you know, apart from that, you know, I did my master's in political science. And I always wanted the job at the United Nations. I did a bit of an internship at the United Nations, only to realize that it wasn't for me. Then from there on, you know, I started selling cars. You know, I've always been you're not a petrol head, more diesel head. I started selling cars because somebody once told me, and it was the late Anton Rupert, who said every career has got a selling angle to it. So you got to sell something in your life if you want to achieve something, or, you know, have your own business one day? And I started selling cars, and I moved on from selling cars to become a premium brand manager for a brand, a well-known family-orientated vehicle brand. And from there, I've always wanted to be in advertising. I remember back fondly when I was young, I used to watch Newcomer of the Week. Back then, it was all the ads they displayed on a Monday morning, I think around about 9 o'clock. That will be on across the 4 channels we had at the time, TV1, 2, 3, and 4. Not very inspirational names, but I mean, that's what we had. Later on, TV4 became TV1 and CCTV and whatever. It's not closed circuit TV, it was something else. But so I watched Newcomer of the Week, and I was always inspired by, the ads of the time. And I still look at them fondly, and I remember that childhood memories. And obviously that sort of shaped me to become involved in advertising. And then I applied for a job at an agency, and I didn't get the job because I didn't have the notorious old English tie attire, because advertising was different in the days quite a few years ago. So, eventually you find a place that will take you in as a junior suit, and you carry the job bags, and you carry the porty bags and everything. And it's, pretty much starting from the bottom of the barrel and, scraping all the way up, so today, 10 years on, me and my partner, Michelle, we co-own an advertising agency, which is a boutique agency. And it's been interesting.
And what has been some of the projects that you can share that you've worked on that people might recognize when they look at newspapers and TV and all these kind of things?
Well, to be honest, the projects that I really that I find inspirational is sometimes the projects that we didn't work on. It's always interesting. You say, geez, why didn't we think of that? So in the agency world, it's quite small, even though there's a lot of agencies out there. You find inspiration from lots of places, and you find your inspiration, you draw inspiration by just being awake and being passionate and listening. And I think, let's just take a step back. I think some of the most notorious work that we've done, is sometimes not stuff that you can see on the big screen, etc. But it's the work behind the scenes that actually saves lives. It's the work that you don't always get recognition for in terms of a lorry or a pendor and all that. But it's you can see the actual difference the work makes on grassroots level. We've done fantastic work in Zambia for a very big client there, and actually a safety project that we launched there a few years ago that actually you could see, how it saves lives. Sometimes the client is more retail orientated. Then you have to do something that makes the cash register ring. So sometimes you need to build a brand and give it more emotive feel, and then you work on that. So, I would say, for me personally, without naming brands, because they're not paying for the advertising space on your show, I think there's some big brands that do really great work behind the scenes and really care. And especially in these times with lockdown and everything, it's not just putting lip service out there and say, listen, we are for the people in the front line and all that. It's what you actually do for the people in the front line that makes a difference. So it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to actually do it. My personal most memorable thing that I've done is through a campaign for automotive client. We landed a plane on a horse, not a horse, the four-legged horse. Before the animal rights people think different. It's a truck, the front part of the truck. So yeah, we actually landed a plane on that, which was quite spectacular. We didn't have anything new to launch, and it was just a powerful proposition statement or a statement that we had to launch, which was all about trust. And every single thing in that campaign, pulled back to the word trust. Trust us to get you there safe. Trust us to get your luggage to your room. Trust us, just put your trust in us. And, that final display was just a full-on act of trust. Obviously, I didn't drive the truck or the plane. I mean, I'm not that gung-ho, but we had professionals doing it and performing it. And soon after that, other brands also started in that realm of commercial vehicles to display acts of grandeur, like your epic split commercial that you saw, those things. So, but for me, always in advertising, the most memorable things is not always the stuff that your agency get an award for. It's, what makes the client happy and what puts them in a better position. Yeah. We're pretty much behind the scenes, and, we don't do peer advertising for our peers so that people can just slap us on the shoulder or the back and say, hail fellow, well met, well done, etc. So, we've done some brilliant groundbreaking work in Afrikaans, in conjunction with top Afrikaans writers, in conjunction with top Afrikaans artists, and we've got recognition for that. But ultimately, it's you're only as good as your last job. So for us, it's to even look at smaller clients to say that how can we make a difference in your world for your customer or for your business.
And especially now, people have to step back a little bit and look at these small guys who's keeping the economy going. But on that, were you saying about the grandeur, the split between the two trucks? I actually met the guy who's the mastermind behind that ad. And
it's incredible. I think the world of advertising and marketing has changed dramatically. But there's some sayings that you can't. I don't want to say only men can make certain decisions, but we always say it's got to take some balls to do it. And it's not saying that a man signed off on it or anything, but it's about a client that just puts the trust in you as the creative director or the marketing agency. And at first they might fall off their chair and say, what the hell are you smoking or drinking or doing? I mean, this is not the 80s, so things have also changed in that social regard. But at the end of the day, they give you that trust and say, listen, this is what we want to achieve, and find a way that to develop something or conceptualize something that it will bring the message across. Sometimes we're trying to be too clever. Sometimes we underestimate our audience and we feeble. But you know what? If it's 50% off, say it's 50% off. There's too much smoke and mirrors out there anyway. So for an agency to be allowed to be creative, I think is becoming very, very difficult. People are scared. They look at the bottom line. They don't look at all the factors. And you have to be brave. It's extremely important to be brave, but not to be reckless in terms of a cowboyish, a boorish way.
But and the difficult part is to get the idea that you've got in your head to make it work. Because I've often had some ideas that I wanted to do for clients, and then I just couldn't make it work. Or then you had to figure out something along the line in the middle of the whole thing.
To take you back, how advertising evolved is, when I was starting off in advertising, we had storyboards, we had scamps, we had, almost an art director or illustrator illustrating, almost line by line the concept. It was not just a copy heavy deck that landed somewhere. And with respect, some people see, you have to put the picture in front of them. You have to put the tree in front of them and write tree below it for them to understand that it's a freaking tree, So it's just, it's just difficult. And especially if you're in the visual side of things, you can see it in your head, but to translate that, sometimes words fail. You can't translate that concept verbally, so you almost have to do a pilot and shoot it. Almost do half of the work beforehand and then show it, and then people say, aha, now we get it. So it's changed dramatically, and budgets has shrunk, so you have got to be very thrifty with a budget, and very, very suinig, you can't just blare it all out on one thing and And, you know, it's at the end of the day, it's a hit and a miss. So, you know, you've got to be conscious. And that's why, you know, I think agencies have changed over time as, you know, to become more creative partners than anything else to a client. Back in the days, the agencies had a lot of money. There was only selected channels that you could put the message across or put it on. And people literally arm wrestled for those spots, you know. So now it's changed with the internet of things. It's changed dramatically.
How much of your stuff is moving towards social media rather than traditional?
A hell of a lot. I must say, some of our traditional clients that didn't believe in online marketing or social marketing or digital marketing, doesn't matter how you put it. You know, we've convinced them that, you know, in some cases, you know, for a once-off flighting, the cost is X, you know. So here we can have repetitive flighting, we can change the message, we can tamper it, you know, so that it, you know, it doesn't, you know, at the end of the day, it still stops the thumbs, you know, from scrolling over something, etc. And we've seen the results, especially when you look at universities, you know, how they marketed themselves a few years ago versus how they do it now, you know. But for me, there's still always a balance between traditional media, your mainstream media, and your social or online media. But we have to be conscious and understand what is the objectives. And that's sometimes something that we as an agency or agencies don't get from a client, is what do you want to achieve? Now, in all my years in advertising, and I've met some serious greats in advertising, some of them have passed on, some still is, you know, very much involved in the ad world. No one has got the damn crystal ball on what's going to happen tomorrow, etc. We can kind of discuss or think, but we don't know. So for us, it's very difficult. So we have to have some sort of a guideline or objectives, and then we take, you know, go through a creative thinking process and dismantling everything and say, okay, how can we simplify the message, or how can we reach the target audience so that they're comfortable to receive our message, you know, probably in the right way, or yeah.
Well, well, some of the biggest things that's changed the last 10 years is that Facebook has taken over. Facebook has risen and then it's plateaued out, and now it's completely fallen flat on its, I wouldn't say it's completely fallen flat. It's still the cheapest advertising you can do online. But what are some of the cheapest ways that you've seen people market themselves that had an absolutely shoestring budget?
I think it's, you know, for people to realize that, you know, even, and it depends once again on the type of business. I mean, you know, sometimes it's a personal brand. I mean, you've had people on this show that is, Marcel, for instance, she's a personal brand. I mean, she's not building a brand for some clothing necessarily. I mean, she's a personal brand in her own right. Is to understand that you've got a brand per se. I mean, it's Dewald, you know, you're a brand, you know, so to look at it like that and say, listen, I've got my own brand, is to invest in your brand to make it look, you know, as professional as you can make it look, to make sure that whatever content that you put out is relevant and it is reputable, because you know, with fake news and fake stuff coming up everywhere, you know, you've got to make sure that you protect your brand, even if it's a personal brand, to make sure that you you know, you pair yourself with the right stuff, or you know, the right people, or the right clothing line, or the right this or the right that, you know, not just to go after it for the money, and to make sure that whatever you do is reputable and that it's, you know, relevant to whatever you're selling. If it's a personal service, or if it's a, you know, a tangible thing that you've got to wear, etc., or use, you know, even more so. But is to invest in your own brand and to make sure that you offer a very seamless and integrated service to somebody that, you know, when they deal with you, it's a pleasure to deal with you. And I think that's where the smaller brands, you know, have a bit of a foot up on some of the bigger ones. There's not a lot of red tape necessarily to deal with. unless you've been locked down completely, you can't deliver or whatever, which now it's been lifted. But to make sure that it's every touch point, and I use this quite often in the agency, is that when you deal with people, make sure that you deliver time bombs of pleasure. Is whenever at every stage they deal with you, it's a time bomb of pleasure. So it's a pleasurable moment to deal with you. And I know there's ups and downs, and there's difficulty sometimes to create something, or to get sign off on something, or to get the message across. But make sure it's as pleasurable as possible. And if it goes haywire, the process is how you handle it from there. Are you ghosting them and not just, I'm not talking them, I'm ignoring them, they're in file 14 or 15, or are you addressing it heads on with the necessary care and understanding? I think Afrikaans has got a better word. It's called deernis, empathy. I think that deernis, it goes a long way. So, and work it out and make amends, make it right. So, I would say invest in your own brand, make sure that whatever communication you do is consistent, and that you deliver on your promises, and that you keep the communication alive with your audience, or the people that you're after.
And also be honest, because don't bullshit clients, because oftentimes they've been around the bush far longer than you've been. So the bullshit will come out somewhere along the line.
Yeah, well, the time is gone where you order a vehicle and you stand in line and you wait for the factory to come and deliver it, one day to a certain set point. Once again, the Internet of Things has changed things dramatically. Google is always on, so that's why if you can't give a personal answer now, people will turn somewhere else, which is usually a Google or a search engine, and they will look for stuff there. They do their research. People are fairly well informed, but we will see a trend where and it's not a trend, but we will see now where the internet's really been opened up for people, because we don't have anywhere else to go, is that people will scrutinize the sources of news or information. Back in the days, we looked at reviews and we say, well, it's a crap review, but now we're going to dig a bit deeper in order to understand, my hard-earned money, where I'm going to spend that, is it worth my while? And that's how things will change. Yes, the tactile stuff is still very important. I mean, look at the outrage if you have to pay for clothing, but you can't return it because it doesn't, the size doesn't fit, in this time, So tactile is still very, very important. Sensory experiences within marketing or anything is very important. Even in flat things like photography, the way you set up the photo, if you set it up, if it's street photography, you can still sometimes get a sensory feel for it. So, it's becoming very, very important in our industry.
Yeah, no, it's changing times. It's awesome. But right, let's move on to some more fun stuff. How's your photography going?
Well, pretty much. I took a grind to a halting grind, because I should film. So, and I was threatening myself the whole time to just put up a dark room, and I never got to it. And now they've closed up the labs that develop film. So I'm shooting, but I don't know what the hell I'm shooting. Well, I know what I'm shooting, but I mean, I don't see what I shoot. So it made me participate in quite a few courses now online. Some of them being, academies abroad. And it made me pick up a digital camera again for the first time in 10 years, which I must say is quite daunting, and it's quite liberating too, because you can see what you've done. So the great thing about photography, and I've spoken to quite a few of my photography friends across the world, and it allows you to still explore around your home. And now that almost always at home, you follow the light around your house or around your garden, and you see by this time of day, there's fantastic natural light in this section, here's something that I can do with this, so you go out, and what makes digital great is that you can just shoot, you know. And people often ask me, which camera do I prefer? I will tell if I'm allowed to use brand names on your show, but it's the camera that you have. You know, first it's your eye, because you know, that's the first camera, you know. So if you can see, you know, then, you know, that's a great camera also, because seeing a photo is quite important. But you know, it's the camera that you have on you, and the digital, you know, even if it's a phone or whatever, you know, it makes for great fun to shoot around the house and do a bit of a you know, quite a serious amount of work, you know, a body of work around your own house that you've never done before, never seen before, because suddenly you're much more aware and tuned into your micro surroundings than you ever were.
It's all what I've seen. A lot of people that are hobby type photographers, or guys that interact with other photographers, they tend to do that. But most of the photographers that I know are either wedding families or stuff like that. They don't pick up a camera in times like these. They will only pick up a camera when they go to the next wedding the next weekend. So now a lot of them are sitting at home twiddling their thumbs because they don't know what they are to do with their cameras, and they won't pick it up and just go play with it. It's the weirdest thing for me. They won't do it.
It can go both ways. I think some people has got camera fatigue, maybe, because, you know, that's their livelihood from day in and day out. But I think it's a fantastic time to hone skills, and I'm not saying they're terrible. I mean, who the hell am I to tell them how to shoot? But I mean, for me, it's to explore, you know, different ways to get that signature stuff going, you know. So when you pick it up again, it's like second nature. But I mean, nowadays we conduct all our meetings and all our work on screen. There's nothing better for me than taking out a pen and writing, you know, in a journal, you know, certain things, or picking up a book and reading a book, because I don't do the Kindle thing. I don't do the you know, the e-reading thing, because I do that every day. Everything happens on a screen. So for me, it's quite liberating to go the analog route, if you want to go that way. You know, and after this, I'll see, you know, when the labs develop again, what I've shot. But I agree. I think it's now is the time to do different things. You know, use natural light, you know, where you can, and explore the settings and stuff on your camera. You know, I'm for very natural photos, not editing the living daylights out of it, or just shooting, you know, natural light. That's what I love.
So when are you going to put up your own darkroom?
Well, you know, I've considered it, but, you know, I've got a very good developing lab in Johannesburg that they look very well after, you know, the few of us that shoot analog and shoot with film. And, you know, for me, you know, to put up a darkroom would be almost, you know, going against the grain for them. You know, I'd rather give my money to them. They're professionals. I mean, they certainly are, you know, the old Beef days. I can use that brand. They don't exist anymore. But I mean, guys like Dennis and you know, the Rautenbachs, they're exceptionally talented when it comes to developing and printing. You know, so I'd rather support them and keep them going. You know, that's I'm, you know, a power of one, but, you know, I'd rather do that. And if they tell me, you know, we're going to throw in the towel, you know, I'll say, listen, I want to set up something and, you know, help me or whatever.
Look, honestly, there's a lot of days I actually wish that I wish we were back in analog and shooting film, because you don't have to sift through 3,000 photos after a wedding you to go and find the best ones, or the client asks you, well, how many photos am I getting? And I said, well, I normally take about 500 shots, and I normally filter it down to 70, between 70 and you get, and then they still ask for more.
They want to see it all, you know, they want to see it all. You know, it's in the camera world, you know, it's becoming a bit of an arms race. who's got the fastest the fastest gear, because, you know, people are making their money through, you know, some of these stock library or big newsrooms that sit, you know, in the cloud, and you upload quickly, you know, you shoot wirelessly, transmitting everything through. And I understand that, you know, that's for people that really, you know, they're hardcore, they make a good income from that. If one of the newsrooms decides to run your photo on page 1, you know, you strike it hot or whatever, but, you know, it's quite difficult. And you know, I think, you know, although I understand it, you know, for me it's a different thing. For me, it's a passion. I don't want to make money out of it, and even if I try, I probably will not make money out of it. You know, I shot a 21st birthday once at Stellenbosch, and the only two photos came out because we dipped into the sherry bar, and you know, I forgot to load the second film. So you know, that memories is gone. You know, so I so there's positives and negatives to it, but you know, understand that people make money out of it, and you know, good for them, and that's why you've got to own your craft, and that's why you've got to be very good at what you do. Not just taking the photo, but also, you know, the way you frame it and the way you edit it, and to put your signature on it, because there's a lot of photographers out there, but what makes you stand out from the rest? You know, it's the same with advertising agencies, and there's a lot of creative people out there, and what makes you different from the rest? You know, that's, you got to find that uniqueness.
Yeah, no, I've got 3 film cameras here, and they're sitting in my cupboard. They've got film loaded in. Some of them, that one camera, the film in there must be about 7 years old. So it would be interesting to see what comes out of it if I go shoot with them now, because the films will be expired. Two of them are black and white and one color roll, but they are sitting here. But I must actually make a plan with that.
So you must just, you know, shoot it. You know, probably, you know, sometimes, you know, I've had a Hasselblad that developed a light leak.
Yeah.
And on some of the photos, the light leak was absolutely amazing. You know, the way the photo came out, it looks quite, you know, fantastic. But, well, for me, but, and people say, how do you get that filter or that effect? Well, there's, you don't, you know, so it's part of it. So it's like a lucky packet, you know, you don't know if you got the shot or not. And I think that's what made it quite interesting back in the days. If you look at the old school photographers, you know, how they captured that decisive moments, or that you know, it wasn't posed, it was shot, you know, and it's still relevant today. It's amazing, you know, how they got to do it. That's not saying I'm battering digital, not at all. I think what digital did is just to make it very accessible for a lot of people. And even more so now, if you shoot predominantly digital, you have to own your skills and be on top of your game. Because, you know, people shoot publishable photos on their phones.
Yeah, it's there was a guy that a friend of mine shared the link. It's probably about 2-3 years ago, but this guy that went, he's a news photographer or sport photographer, and he went to photograph the Daytona 500 or something in the States. And he had a shoebox full of old expired Valvias and Porters and all those things. And he took this box to the Daytona and he shot all the film. And the photos that came out of it was mind-blowing. It was amazing.
I mean, I saw that, and you know, the guy actually shot it with an old, I think it was a Graflex, you know, big format camera. You know, it was, you know, it's crazy. You know what the people do, and the quality on the feel. You know, once again, the grit, the tone, and the feel that sensory feeling that you get from that specific photos that person took. You know, it was incredible. You know, you can put the same photo that was taken now by a very fast, state-of-the-art, you know, D850, or, you know, what's that new thing coming out that everybody's raving on Canon's side. But, you you can shoot it with that and it's going to be fantastic. But I mean, that grittiness, that feel that you get from that old school stuff is just insane. So
I think
well done.
film photography is like bow hunting and fly fishing and and nowadays is that the easy stuff is not so much fun anymore. You want it to be difficult.
It's because, especially if you look at fishing and hunting and all these things, there's a lot of people that says, but why do you do it? Why the hell do you do it? And it becomes a bit of a vegetarian bun fight, on certain channels, etc. But for me, it's always been about ethical hunting, and it's all about ethical fishing where you can. It's we're not spearing things in the ocean. We're doing it. It's a very much more tactical and strategic way to approach, fishing or hunting, etc. Catch and release and everything. So it's I've tried fly fishing and I need a mentor. So if you know somebody up here or lockdown is done, please come and visit me and help me, with my casting on that. But like ethical hunting, bow hunting, etc. It's getting almost back to primal basics, of doing things, and it's because there's an enjoyment in that. It's an art form, from actually tying the fly to going out and testing it. You don't have you might have a crap result. I'm not saying you're going to try and do that when you go out and do hunting on buffalo. I mean, then you need to know your stuff. You can't just go and tickle there. But but for me, it's getting back to certain basics, and you see it across all formats. Is from farm to table. You see it in illustration. People taking up illustration seriously again. It's not just a comic affair. If you look at great artists in our midst, the Conrad Boertes, the Kannemeyers, etc. The very political and socio-political in some of the messages, or most of the messages, but it's readable. People want to go for that alternative as opposed to something that was almost computer generated or fabricated. So ethical sourcing of food, it's a long list.
I saw on your Instagram you're a Conrad Boertes fan, and talking about fly fishing. That's how I know Conrad. We used to go fishing for snook and stuff off the West Coast. And I've actually been chatting to him to get him onto the talk as well, but he's not a very public person.
He's exceptionally shy. I know. Well, he's probably he can. If he does, he can speak for himself. But I mean, he's very much a one-on-one person. I think he's sometimes people misunderstood what he's trying to do with his art. And I think people should be not always afraid and criticize. They should dig a bit deeper, like I said, into news or whatever, is finding out if they don't understand what it's saying, why does it bother them, then dig deeper. It's the same like balanced photography. I mean, or his music videos.
Yeah, but it's in this digital age where people will see a picture on Facebook or they'll see a heading and then they will jump on the bandwagon. And I've said it so many times, if you want to gauge the average IQ of people in the world, not just South Africa, like if you want to get the average IQ of everybody in the world, just look at the comments that you get on News 24 and Marula Media and these things.
No, it's probably on this pod or this live show, we'll probably also get a few interesting comments. I don't know. For me, it's I've seen it. It's almost like you open up for the peanut gallery, and people are very sometimes. And this is very, I'm for algemeening now. Now I'm generalization, big time generalization here to say that people sometimes got a goldfish mentality, but it's they don't go after the source or understand the context, and that's very difficult to convey context via text. You know, whereas body language or tone of voice, etc., those things play a hell of a big role. And over text, there's no tonality sometimes, you know. So Twitter, you know, I don't have to tell you what's always going on Twitter. You know, it's people just take the ball and run with it without knowing what game they're playing.
Yeah.
So you know, it's very, very difficult in the social era to convey that tone or that empathy or that, you know, whatever, because everybody is on their high moral or horse the whole time. You know, they look for people that they can brandish or bash. And you've got to be very, very careful. And I'd rather, you know, have a conversation with somebody instead of, you know, toning down so much that at the end of the day you keep quiet. And what we need is conversation. We need people to say, listen, you know, we disagree and these are the reasons why. We don't see enough healthy debates going on, and which is a problem. You get people that, like you say, run with the headlines. They don't read. They don't take the time to read. People are, I usually use the term time poor. They, although they've got a lot of time on their hands, they, you know, procrastinate or whatever they do, and they run with the headline and they think, you know, they know everything about that article, etc., without digging in. Some editors, I must say, also, you know, use the headline to pull in people. It's clickbait or it's, you know, dog whistling or whatever you want to call it. But you know, it's important that we have a conversation and that we look further than the headline or, you know, the piece of art, and have the dialogue and the discussion around that. You know, either it's a piece of word art, if it's an article, or, you know, art that's just somewhere on the wall or sculptured or whatever.
Yeah, but sometimes I just can't help myself. I get this urge to cause a bit of gatkrap in these comments. I can't help myself, and sometimes I'll sit there and I'll think, I've typed it out already. And I just need to press the send, but then I think, oh no, shit, I'm just going to open up a can of worms here. I'm not going to do it. But then every now and again, I just do it to get that kick again.
No, it's you know, you've got to be, you know, also responsible in terms of what you're saying, especially if, you know, building a brand or whatever. You know, people are, you know, lashing onto you if you side with a certain side or not. But I must say, you know, it is quite entertaining, some of the comments. One of my friends said, you can't believe that these people walk among us, you know, sometimes how, you know, how inadequate their verbalization or their understanding is of a complex situation. You know, they're playing the person, they're not playing the ball, and it's refreshing, but it's also sad. So yeah.
In one of the photography groups, a woman came in there. She's not a photographer at all. She came in and she's looking for a photographer to come and photograph. It's about 2 months ago. There was this big thing about 70,000 live sheep that was going to be exported to the UAE, and all the vegan organizations climbed on the SPCA, and everybody tried to stop this. And Gary Nel was the attorney representing the SPCA in the whole bang shoot. So they lost the case in court. So these poor little scarpies was destined for the harbor. Okay. So they had protests all over the country, in Joburg and Cape Town. So this woman commented in this group, she's looking for a pro bono photographer to come and photograph this march. That was going to happen. So I commented, I would love to come and do it, but I just want some of the scalp choppies when we're done.
No, you're not vegan enough to shoot that, you know, so yeah. I know you like the price, so that's why. But yeah, the world has changed, and you know, it's good to see that people are exercising, you know, and in terms of their intellectual capacity. I'm not talking about the between certain hours exercising. I'm saying exercising their minds and applying, in some cases their minds. And you want to encourage, a healthy debate where knowledge is shared in an open and trusted environment. We've seen censorships gone wrong. We've seen very clever ways to go about, censoring certain things. Also, in especially artists, they usually lead the way in terms of, getting around the issue, but still getting the message across. In music, James Phillips, he was notorious for getting, certain statements out through music. And I don't think you see a lot of that nowadays. I'm sad to say it, but you don't see a lot of that in music, especially nowadays. And art is always been one of the art, the written word, the spoken word, the visual stuff has always been at the forefront of changing it. Now in Cape Town, you see surfers, doing their thing.
But it's about that the money in the bank. They want something to be as big as hit as quick as possible and last till next weekend so they can put out a new hit again. And then whatever happens to this one just falls away. I keep on saying, like you say, the goldfish mentality. If something's 48 hours old, the people have already forgotten about it.
No, it's a big problem is to make things memorable. Like I say, it's if we sing certain jingles, in advertising, we still remember which brand it's for. Last night I had a look. I don't watch TV. I confess I don't watch TV that often. Being in advertising, that's probably a sin. But I read. I prefer to read and listen to music. And to be out in nature when I can. That's where or just outside. Or just to be around people where you can, or around buildings. That's where you get your inspiration from. Well, where I get mine from. So, and you look at the commercials and what's on TV, and you mindfully try to recall some of the ads that you saw and what was the message that you took out of it. And there's a brand that I won't know, but the only thing that I took out of it, that this is really bad, and I don't usually want to criticize my peers in the business because we've done some pretty bad stuff ourselves. So
once. There was one on last night. We were watching Karen Zoid's program, and it's her main sponsor. There was two ads.
Yeah. No, that for me was just a roller coaster of badness, So yeah.
Is that the one you're talking about, the roller coaster?
That's the one, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to name them because tomorrow they might sign up with us. But I don't know.
And then the one where she said, where she just stood there and she just sings by a donkey for it is so stupid.
It's difficult. People, it's very tough to, there's so many variables that takes part in building a commercial. It's not even funny. It's from the client brief to, certain things. Sometimes you're lucky if you get a brief. Sometimes you don't, and then you just say, listen, we need X. And, so agencies are sometimes very much, blamed, whereas I think it cuts both ways. I think you need an agency with backbone, which is very difficult in daunting financial times to tell a client, listen, I don't think this is going to work. Or we should be more brave, or we should be this or that. So it's quite challenging because you don't want to jeopardize that relationship that you've built up in telling a client, what, this idea stinks.
Can you remember that ad? I can't remember which cell phone company it was for, with a little dog that kept on humping his owner's leg.
No, that was Cell C. Cell C. They got into a lot of trouble for that, but they also got a lot of people giving them accolades for what they've done, for being outside of the mold.
It was brilliant.
And you will never be able to please everybody. And, you know, that's unfortunately, you know, the way art or commercial art works. You know, you will offend people. You don't do it to offend people. I think the main objective is still to keep the brand top of mind. You don't want people to turn away from the brand. I mean, then you're doing contra advertising. That's not what you want to do. So is to bring people on side and say, listen here, have a look at us. We're refreshingly different, or we're refreshingly unique. Consider us. We know you've got a good relationship because your dad's been driving X, Y, and Z for his whole years, but, you know, consider us if you want to think change or different or whatever. So, you know, it's all about the purpose that you try to bring into that commercial or into that brand's tone or voice. But yeah, Cell C, they had that ad. It was very different for the time, very different in that realm of advertising of cell phone or cellular network advertising. And yeah, they got flack for it. They got positive responses. But you can't please everybody. If you try to please everybody through whatever you're trying to create, you're creating almost like a vanilla ice cream, and not everybody loves vanilla ice cream. So you gotta decide where you want to go and what the objective is of that piece of art or commercial that you're creating.
I've got another question for you. What inspired your Instagram handle?
Yes, Maandag se Moer. It's in English, it means screw Mondays, if you want to put it, you know, in some other, you know, way. I dreaded Mondays going to work, especially in advertising, because a lot of clients left the hospital passes for Friday afternoon. Then they wake up and then they say, we have this massive presentation in front of the board or whatever on a Monday. And by 8 o'clock on a Monday, you know, we've got to rock up with creative, up the yin yang, you know, and everything. And you've got to work over weekends and work. And it's almost like, you know, that ulcer is developing, you know, over the weekend. You know, I had a notorious boss, which he had on his, we became partners later on, but when he was my boss, you know, he had a poster in his office that says, I don't get ulcers, I give them. So, you know, so working in that, you know, rife, you know, never sleeping, always on in your head environment, and you've got to rock up on Mondays, everything's got to be delivered. And I'm talking delivery in terms of before emails and all the fancy presentation stuff that we've got. I mean, things have changed dramatically. If you just look at, you know, Facebook's been with us since 27, I think. And that, you know, it's not even that long, you know, 2007, I think. Yeah. And then it was still doing the mock-ups and printing up the stuff and getting it to people. And, you know, they've got to be looking like the bee's knees on Monday. And I just hated Mondays. So I decided that the only way I can control my crap feeling about Mondays is to call it Maandag se Moer, screw Mondays, you know, I'm taking charge of Mondays. So, but now in the lockdown era, you know, every day feels like a bloody Monday. It feels just one extended freaking week, you know. It's like
yeah, well, that first
day, it's one day, you know, it's one day. But anyway,
first 3 weeks felt like, well, the first week felt like a week of Sundays because it was dead quiet. Nobody did anything, and anyway, and then people just start, all of a sudden start waking up and say, shit, okay, right, we need to do something. Otherwise, we're going to go nuts and we'll smother the kids in their sleep and all those kind of things.
No, I'm more worried about people, you know, brewing their own stuff, you know, without knowing what the hell they're doing. You know, it's I think that's going to kill a few people. I mean, it's the micro breweries and the stookkettels that's coming out. You know, you don't know what people are throwing in that stuff. You know, so.
But then again, what did the old people throw in it? They also didn't know, and how many of them died? Very few.
I think they had a stronger constitution than us, and
My father-in-law tells me a story that a guy that used to work with him, he met his wife in the hell in Gamkas Kloof.
yes, yeah.
And he would go there like once every 2 months or 3 months, and they would go back and visit her parents, and he would take, they would bring a sheep and some vegetables and stuff back, and as a present he would take them brandy from Cape Town. So he said the first time he did that, he stopped at the one oom next to the road. He says, "Well, listen, I'm looking for a sheep." So the oom says, "Did you bring some brandy with?" He says, "Yeah." And he took out a bottle of KV4 or Clippies or whatever the story is. And the oom just sat down on his haunches and he downed the bottle and he says, no, come, son, I need to come and give you some real brandy, not this shit you're bringing from the colony.
Yeah, back in the days, I mean, it was Commando Brandewijn and all those, fantastic labels that you saw. It's some of them are making a comeback. It's quite interesting to see the new brands, picking up, and quite interesting how people are looking at organic farming and organic way of doing things. And some old brands are really making a revival. Some brands that was old and notorious are really battling at this moment in time. So it's uncharted territory. And that's why you need a leader that's not rudderless, that can steer us, wherever in your organization or whichever organization. So it's quite interesting times that we find ourselves in.
Is alcohol businesses allowed to advertise in this stage? Because I can't recall that I've seen anything, or have they been stopped a while ago already?
I think, if you look at the social channels, they are still advertising. They've tweaked their messaging slightly. Obviously, we've seen figures now of online sales in the alcohol industry that's really going through the roof. People cannot wait for the next level to step in, because that will obviously unlock alcohol delivery. The sales part of it is going to be, according to what we read and see, is going to be quite regulated in terms of hours. It's almost like you can only visit an off sales between X and Y time. So people are turning to online, channels, the online delivery, or wine sellers, if you want to call it that. Some of the wine farms are geared to handle that. Some are not. So they tie in with the bigger distributors that's got an online platform. So you see a lot of people flocking and migrating to online sales of wine, because they don't want to expose themselves to going outside and standing in queues and waiting, etc., which is, almost, a contrast of social distancing. You see people queuing everywhere. So what are you trying to do here? It's strange, but so there's an uptake in online, savviness. There's an uptake in online safety and understanding that it's safe. I mean, I use the example of an ATM that we saw in the 80s when the first automatic telebank was launched, and nobody wanted to use the damn thing, because what's this machine? You used to know Chris in the bank, and you go in there and you talk to him, and everybody talks about whatever, and they hand you your money. And they realized that the ATM at the time was positioned wrong. It was almost higher than the person working on it. So you became subservient, to this machine thing. It's almost like a preekstoel up there, and you, so it's very much talking to you. So they changed the layout, and suddenly people, opened up to use this thing. So you are on top, you are working like this. So that made a hell of a difference, and it's psychological. So, with online, first and foremost, data fees, that's still extraordinarily high in our country. Access to internet is very difficult in some cases. I mean, just cell phone signals here is just terrible. And I mean, I'm in Johannesburg, you know, it's very difficult, but it's opening up because the user experience is becoming more friendly. It's becoming more warm. It's less machine-like. It's more almost like you are on the wine farm. Although it won't replace that feeling completely. I mean, you had Dewald on here. I mean, he's a very enigmatic guy, and it's you know, he knows his craft. And I'd rather prefer to spend time with him on his farm or somewhere in, you know, Baardskedersbos omgewing than you know, visiting his website. You know, not saying his website's boring, but I mean, he's just got so much more going, you know, than that. But websites are becoming more friendly, user experience wise. There's a lot of move towards UI, the user interface, the user experience built into marketing machinery or places or websites, etc.
And still, there's people with money out there. We've got like a little leather online business. And we've had quite a number of orders coming in through the lockdown period. It's delivery has obviously been a bit of an issue, but even in times like this, there's still people that's got money for luxuries.
They've got money for quality goods. You know, luxury goods will always be under pressure. You know, I've worked with extremely, you know, well-known brands within the luxury segment. And, you know, when there's a bit of a hiccup in the economy, you know, luxury brands feel it. They feel it because people would rather spend money on something else than a luxurious item. But if it's a quality product, that and that's what I'm seeing is that, you know, people has got time on their hands, develop something that makes it worth their while to first read your story or to investigate your story and to understand that it's, you know, this is not a fly-by-night thing that is just, you know, a knockoff or whatever. There's some effort and time that's been put into it. People investigate that and they understand that, you know, this is something of quality. And I'd rather spend money on something that will last than have to you know, purchasing the same thing, you know, because you see a lot of effort going into ethical sourcing of goods. There's the footprint. Where did this come from? Who's making this stuff? What is the backstory here? You know, is there a longevity aspect into this? People are, you know, the throwaway society is becoming very much scrutinized in terms of, you know, even if you look at the fast food industry. So those are parallels that you can draw and you can pull across. People, you know, the disposable economy of things, you know, they think about, oh, I paid X for this, but now I'm throwing it away. You know, how can I repurpose this? How can I, you know, so you see a lot of that happening. And that's positive.
I want to get a name here that I want to come on.
You want to drop a name?
I listened to a podcast where they spoke to the gentleman, Yvonne Koernard. If you can see that.
Yes.
He's the founder of Patagonia Clothing.
Yes, yes.
Have you heard his story?
Yes, he wrote a fantastic book that he said, I'd rather let my people go surfing.
Correct, correct.
And once again, a very ethical brand. You know, as far as anything is concerned for them, it's all about, you know, not just buying something. It's expensive. Their clothing is expensive in South Africa. You can buy it here. In the States, etc., it's less so expensive, but it's a quality outdoors apparel product. Very ethical in terms of their operations. Although they do manufacture, you know, in the East, you know, I think the way they approach it is, hello.
The clothing companies have to do it, but one of the things that they said is that they make sure that they use zips, buttons, all those kind of things that can be reused. So they've got a program in the company where if you've got a Patagonia jacket, you don't want it, they'll buy it back from you. And then they will reuse all the buttons, the zips, the whatever they can.
Yeah, I've got one or two of their garments because it just lasts. If you put stuff through their paces, people always ask, why do you go for certain brands? I see myself as somebody that helps to build brands or, you know, amplify their anthem or whatever. But I, you know, purposefully go out to see, listen, is this something that lasts? Because nothing is more frustrating than going outdoors and, you know, you left on, you know, the bones of your ass because the stuff fails. You'd rather have less stuff, but proper stuff. You know, I don't want to over analyze and keep to the hilt. You know, I don't believe in that. I mean, a few years ago, we traveled through Africa, and you know, some people had the best cameras in the world. When we rocked up in the Serengeti, they couldn't take photos because their batteries failed, and you know, they couldn't charge it. The inverters and the stuff didn't work. So they've planned, but they didn't plan well. And then it makes them the murren when you take out your 1950 Leica and you take photos in the Serengeti because you don't need a battery. You know, I mean, that's planning to fail and you know, yeah, failing to plan on their side. But anyway, but I agree. Patagonia is a fantastic case study in terms of how the process, you know, should be approached. Even though if you manufacture across, you know, overseas, etc. And you know, they locally they run initiatives because you can even bring in a competitor brand if that brand is torn or they will fix it at that store.
Yes, they do.
That takes it across, you know, from if you've got a other brand from another outdoor manufacturer, you can take it to Patagonia's stockists and they will fix up your broken zipper on your sleeping bag or your puff jacket or whatever.
Yeah. Have you listened to the Joe Rogan podcast that he had Elon Musk on recently?
No, all I know is that he's really, you know, getting full of being locked down. He's on the front line of his manufacturing plant. So that's that's the only thing. Yeah, well, I mean, he smoked spliff on one of the other stuff. So I mean, he's really, you know, he's a bit of a rebel in that environment, which is good. I mean, it pushes things. You know, he's refreshingly different, and he's constantly, you know, I would say, challenging the status quo. He's whoever, you know.
It's like because Joe asked him about what is his. He's been in the news lately. He's selling off all his assets. He's selling all his homes, his cars. He says he's going to rent a place. He says, I don't need all those places to live. Why must I have 10 houses? He says he's just going to rent a place to live in. He's selling it.
You know, I think if you've done all that, what he's achieved over the years, you know, and he suddenly, you know, he became more well known with Tesla. But I mean, way before that, he's been involved. You know, I think he got the PayPal stuff and whatever. So I didn't read his book, but I mean, he's been busy a hell of a long time. And you know, I think if you've accumulated all those things, for him, it's about the challenge. You know, I've done this. I've achieved this. You know, let's push it. You know, he's constantly challenging the status quo. He's brave. Yes, he's outspoken, and you know, he lives by the sword. You know, he's not afraid to be going to jail if he's been caught now for on the front line manufacturing or whatever. You know, he's just said, well, I'll go to jail.
Yeah, well, he said that he's got a factory in the East. That's how I got to think of him. He's got a factory in China with 7,000 employees, and none of them got sick or died during the whole pandemic in China. So that's why he's carrying on.
You know, some people, you know, we obviously, you know, there's always the debate, you know, lives versus the economy. But the economy and lives also, you know, has a very much, you know, a strong tie. You know, to what an extent are you going to put lives and just drop the economy side of things? You know, that balance is quite important, and that's I think that's what most of the countries are. You know, the first world are thinking. You know, it's like, yes, we can't. We've got so many people. They're dependent on getting the economy going. We can't just do a total lockdown there. You know, then how will that work? We're going to lose lives, and we're going to lose more lives due to the economy. So it's that scale that's important.
Yeah. Well, I know that you are quite busy. We've gone just over an hour. Is there more stuff you want to chat about?
No, I'm all good. Thanks for having me on your show, and all the best. I think it's quite interesting. It was quite daunting. Like I say, I've got a face for radio and a hairdo for radio at this stage in time. But thanks for having me on your show, and all the best with the future participants.
Thank you. I got a comment from Marlies Lochner. Ek wil soveel goed comment, maar ek lag te veel vir julle twee, as sê goed. Julle helder my dag beslis op.
Yeah, well, she knows us quite well, so she might want to comment some of the stuff offline.
Oh well, yeah. Aldri, thank you again. It's been fun, and like I said to you, it's a conversation, and I think it was just that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and all the best with your show, and make hay. So yeah.
It's all we can do now. I'm not allowed to work, so I might as well keep myself busy doing this.
And do not let your camera become a very expensive desk weight. That is just not right. That's wrong.
For about a week, I've tried to figure out how to use the damn thing as my webcam, and it just kept on failing. But we'll figure that out as well.
No, practice. But anyway, but thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Same for you. Thanks again. All right. Bye-bye.